They landed on the moon on the fourth day and left on the seventh. Millions around the world remember the calm voice guiding Neil Armstrong down to the surface, but few knew what was happening behind that voice. Charles "Charlie" Duke was steady on the radio, yet his heart was pounding at more than 150 beats per minute. Back in Houston, his wife Dorothy was struggling with depression and suicidal thoughts. Duke had reached the highest point any human could imagine, yet when the mission ended, his life felt hollow. The thing that ultimately saved him had nothing to do with space. Charles Moss Duke Jr. was born on October 3, 1935, in Charlotte, North Carolina, during the Great Depression. His family wasn't destitute, but life was uncertain. His father worked in insurance, his mother in retail, and 6 minutes after Charles was born, his twin brother Bill followed. That small gap forged a lifelong bond. Their family history traced back to the American Revolution, and patriotism shaped their worldview from the start. When Japan attacked Pearl Harbor in 1941, Charles was 6 years old. His father joined the Navy, and the family's life became one of constant movement. That instability helped shape Charles into someone adaptable and resilient. While stationed in California in 1942, Charles became fascinated by airplanes. By 1943, his father was deployed to the Pacific, and Charles and Bill moved in with their grandmother in South Carolina. There, the twins spent hours building model planes, their imaginations filled with flight. In 1944, their father returned and was stationed in Daytona Beach. 9-year-old Charles watched military aircraft thunder across the sky daily. The fascination hardened into a dream. After the war, the family settled again, his father returning to insurance and his mother opening a dress shop. In 1949, their younger sister Betsy was born, bringing a sense of stability after years of upheaval. Charles stood out early. At just 11, he became one of the youngest Eagle Scouts in South Carolina. Scouting taught him discipline, leadership, and self-reliance. His twin brother's heart condition meant Bill couldn't keep up physically, and Charles felt both guilt and pressure to excel. Those lessons in endurance and responsibility stayed with him for life. In high school, Charles had a rebellious streak, but his aptitude for physics caught his father's attention. A bold decision followed. Charles would attend a military prep school. At Admiral Farragut Academy in Florida, everything changed. The boy who once bent rules became a leader. Early mornings, strict routines, and academic focus pushed him to the top of his class. By 17, he had earned a place at the U.S. Naval Academy. Just before graduation, disaster struck. A minor eye defect and astigmatism disqualified him from becoming a Navy pilot. His lifelong dream vanished overnight. The Navy offered no flexibility, but the newly formed U.S. Air Force did. Duke switched services, realizing during a Navy cruise that he was never meant for ships anyway. Once back in the cockpit, the joy of flying returned instantly. Flight training was brutal. During a solo night flight, an engine failure forced him to land blind in a cotton field. He survived and pressed on. Jet training followed where he excelled. By the late 1950s, he was flying F-86 Sabres in West Germany at the height of the Cold War, scrambling repeatedly to intercept potential Soviet threats. Once, a transponder failure nearly triggered an international incident, when both NATO and Soviet forces mistook him for an enemy aircraft. In 1964, Duke entered the elite test pilot school at Edwards Air Force Base, overseen by Chuck Yeager. He flew cutting-edge aircraft to the edge of space, enduring intense physical strain while wired with sensors monitoring every reaction. He graduated near the top of his class and stayed on as an instructor, logging thousands of hours in jets. In 1966, Duke applied to NASA after seeing a newspaper article. He was selected as part of a new astronaut group and immediately subjected to punishing physical and psychological tests. Centrifuges pushed him past 15 Gs. He blacked out, vomited, and endured mental stress designed to break even elite pilots. He survived it all. That same period nearly ended his life. While flying the Lunar Landing Research Vehicle, its unstable controls failed at low altitude. With seconds to spare, Duke ejected as the craft exploded behind him. Neil Armstrong survived a similar incident later, and the vehicles were grounded. Duke quietly carried another secret: a serious spinal injury from earlier testing. He underwent spinal fusion surgery without informing NASA, risking his career and possibly his life. As Capcom for Apollo 11, Duke became the voice of humanity's first lunar landing. When computer alarms blared during descent, he stayed calm while panic surged inside. Fuel readings conflicted, seconds ticked away, and Armstrong manually steered past boulders with almost nothing left in the tank. When they finally landed, Duke broke protocol with an emotional line that became legendary. Few knew the toll it took on him. While Duke was calm on the radio, his marriage was unraveling. Dorothy felt isolated and overwhelmed. She tried to connect by studying geology, but Duke was emotionally absent. Her despair deepened, even as her husband became a global hero. Duke later walked on the moon himself during Apollo 16. The mission was riddled with technical failures, system malfunctions, dangerous vibrations, food problems, dust hazards, and near aborts. On the surface, Duke left behind a photo of his family, overcome with emotion inside his helmet. It was one of the most human moments ever experienced on another world. After returning to Earth, Duke continued his Air Force career but eventually left NASA. Civilian life was harder than he expected. A business venture failed. The sense of purpose he'd felt as an astronaut vanished. His marriage was near collapse, and Dorothy's depression worsened. Then something unexpected happened. Dorothy attended a church event and experienced a profound spiritual change. That shift transformed their marriage and pulled Duke out of his own emptiness. He later said that walking on the moon never gave him peace, but faith did. Together they began a new life of ministry, traveling the world and speaking to millions. People came to hear about the moon but stayed to hear about meaning, failure, and redemption. Duke remained active well into old age, mentoring young astronauts, defending the reality of the moon landings, and supporting education and science. At 90 years old, Charles Duke looks back not as a man defined by where he walked, but by what finally filled the emptiness he carried home from the moon.